Good afternoon, Tom.
Hi, Penny.
Hi. I'm interviewing you because you're part of our history project of the Chemistry and Biochemistry Department. What brought you to Tallahassee, and when was that?
Well, I came here in 1966. I had a little bit of an unusual academic background for faculty being hired then, in that when I graduated from college, Spring Hill College over in Mobile, I was also commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Army. So, but the Army deferred me for graduate studies, and I was able to get a PhD in the time they allowed, and then went on active duty for 2 years. So my postdoc was essentially with Uncle Sam. It was a little bit unusual when I started interviewing for jobs. I was born and raised in Florida. I liked the idea of being able to come back to Florida, although I interviewed at a number of other places as well. So I was delighted when Florida State offered me a position.
Did you do analytical work in the Army?
No, it was more physical chemistry type of spectroscopy, flash photolysis, which was sort of a big thing right then, to look at transient molecules. It was interesting that the Army put me in a lab where I could work there instead of being out digging foxholes or directing people to dig foxholes.
Yeah, that was during the Vietnam War.
It was a scary time.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate to spend my 2 years in relative safety. Aside from the big capacitor banks I was firing off to do flash photolysis.
I did transient kinetics too, but by temperature jump.
Right.
At Berkeley.
Yeah.
But, so you were comfortable with Tallahassee, you were born in Florida. So.
Right. Although a long ways away in Miami, but I was delighted to come to Tallahassee and begin working here and be taken in by the chemistry department. The people here were very kind to us when we arrived. My wife and I, we had 2 babies in tow, and that's about all, since you don't establish much permanent while you're in the Army. Charlie Mann and his wife Dorothy were very kind in sort of taking us under their wing, getting us settled in Tallahassee. But other people in the chemistry department were also very helpful and nice. It was great.
So you were, Charlie Mann and you were the first 2 in analytical chemistry?
No. Russell Kears had been here before. Although at the time, and he went back to, I don't know whether he was in the 49ers or before the 49ers. But at that time when I came, he was in administration.
I see.
He was an assistant dean or something in the College of Arts and Sciences. Although he came back to the department eventually and helped us in teaching some of the undergraduate courses. But there was one other person who was on the faculty in Analytical at the time, Merle Emerson. But unfortunately he didn't get tenure, so he didn't stay here very long after I got here. So for a long time it was Charlie and I were the analytical group. We taught all the
That's
the
what
courses.
I remember.
Yes. And he was his interests were primarily in electrochemistry of organic molecules, and then I was doing atomic spectroscopy, and then we gradually grew from there, adding other people over the years. But for a long time, it was just the 2 of us.
Did you collaborate with him?
Not first, but about I don't know, 10 or 15 years in, we each decided to sort of change our areas of research and collaborate. I was doing the spectroscopy, and he was doing the computer-based calculations, spectral enhancement using computerized data. And we also wrote a book together.
What was that called?
It was called Instrumental Analysis, Advanced Analytical Chemistry. We thought we would follow up with another one, but we
never got
after put a lot of effort into it, we finally decided that was a losing proposition. We were very happy to collaborate together, and we just seemed to hit it off and being able to work together.
So the research was really good. It sounds like the teaching, because you said
Right.
other people helped with the teaching. And how about the service opportunities?
Well, interestingly, Charlie and I both served as associate chairman at different times.
I remember when you did.
Right. Yeah, I did it, I think, 3 different times.
Yeah.
At
I was
different
going to
points
say,
in
I
my
thought it
career.
was about 9 years, maybe 10.
It might have been 9 years altogether, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I didn't keep track. I just, did what needed to be done at the time. So,
You always did an excellent job.
well, thank you. I tried to do what needed to be done in the department, and so that was it.
Hmm. Did you ever serve on the faculty senate or anything like that?
I did not serve on the faculty senate, although I sat in a few times as substitutes
Mm-hmm.
when
Somebody else was.
somebody else couldn't go, or
Maybe
Right.
you were the alternate.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And I also worked with the Florida section in the American Chemical Society.
Oh, I do remember
Right.
that.
Right.
Mhm.
So
That was enough.
that was enough. That's
Yeah.
right.
So, what do you think the strengths and weaknesses were of the department in the beginning, and how did they evolve? And I know you haven't
Right.
really been, since you retired in 2008,
2003.
2003.
Right.
You haven't been involved then, but
Right.
in the time you were here.
Well, when I first came, it was a much smaller department, and when I interviewed, the Dittmer building is under construction, and so my first laboratory was in Diffenbaugh,
Mm-hmm.
and it was kind of convenient because I had my research lab, and then all I had to do was step out of the door, and I was in the teaching lab.
Mm-hmm.
It was all very close together, and there was a lot more back and forth between what came to be the divisions. That is, in Diffenbaugh, you were always passing Harry Wolborski or Werner Hertz or somebody in the hall.
From other
Other
areas.
division, other areas. The biochemists were isolated from us in Institute of Molecular Biophysics building, IMB building. But we came over here. We walked across campus then for faculty meetings from Diffenbaugh, which is in the far eastern side of campus, to IMB, which was at that time about as far as the campus went. So we got to see the biochemists as well then.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, Earl Frieden was chairman when I came to
Uh-huh.
Florida State. So
That's interesting. And so how has the department evolved over time?
Well, okay. Of course, it's gotten much bigger, and that breeds, I guess, a certain amount of separation.
Mm-hmm.
The Dittmer is set up with the divisions by floor, as you know, so there was not quite as much interaction with other folks. Of course, the department has expanded tremendously in its national recognition and publications and students, and which was terrific, all to the good. But it was not quite the family place that it was when I first came.
Yes.
Right. But it was great. I always enjoyed my time here. Faculty meetings were always interesting. We had knock-around, drag-out fights about policy, one thing or another, but we were never enemies.
No.
We could always have this very vigorous debate, and then go down in coffee room and all talk about other things. And
Yes.
it was fine.
But everybody had a voice.
Everybody had a voice, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
One particular incident I remember when I first came, maybe the first month or so I was here, Ed Mell and I came the same semester, and we were in perhaps one of our first faculty meetings over in the Molecular Biophysics building, and it was some, I have no idea what the policy was now, but I remember there was a very vigorous debate. And so when it finally quieted down a little bit, Kitty Hoffman, ever the wonderful lady that she was, turned and said, well, what do the new faculty members think? And Ed and I were sitting in the back row trying to just keep our heads down, and I think we would have been glad if she had not asked us. But we were called upon to express our views, so it was very nice.
So were there faculty elsewhere in the university that you interacted with?
Yeah, that was another nice thing. And when we were in Diffenbaugh, and even after we moved from that, there was a faculty club that was in the basement of one of the old buildings there along there by Sally Hall, someplace along there. And Charlie suggested that would be a good thing for me to do. And so he took to taking me over there for lunch, and I joined the faculty club. And there was a big round table in the corner. And at any one time, you could meet people from all across the university. And I remember particularly Bob Lawton, who was the dean of the college, and Martin Roeder, who was the assistant dean, Larry Chalmers, people who were in the upper administration, as well as faculty members from other departments in the sciences and elsewhere. Criminology, Seymour Hess from meteorology. So it was a very nice opportunity to meet and hear about things that were going on in other areas of the university. It was terrific. It's too bad it died out after a while.
I know. Well, they now have that place over at the University Center.
Yeah.
But it's different.
It's different. Yeah, even after we moved over to Dittmer, we would frequently walk back over there. But at the time when there was a lot, when we switched over from Champion was the president to Stanley Marshall, there was suddenly they decided they needed that space, and the faculty club was gone. So it never really recovered after that.
Yeah, that is too bad, because I know when I came, it was just sort of like, well, you bring your own lunch or have to drive somewhere.
Right.
So, now are there any FSU graduate students that you'd like to mention?
Sure. My first PhD student was Ken Bush, and while he was here, he met a young lady who was working in Ron Clark's group, Mariana. I think her maiden name was Anderson, and they got married while they were here. They both went off after getting their PhDs and postdoc at Cornell. Then they both got faculty positions at Baylor University. And for a number of years, Mariana was chairman of the department there until she retired just a few years ago. And so I still keep up with them. So you always remember your first PhD student.
Yes.
One of my last PhD students, actually was a student shared with Charlie Mann, was Way Fountain, who was a young man who came here who was in the Army.
I remember him.
And the Army was going to give him a year to get a master's degree because they had in mind to have him teach at West Point. So he did get a master's degree in the allotted time. He came to work for me, and there were serious discussions about whether we could get this done in a year. Well, but he did. He was a very hard worker. And then he made such progress that he decided he would like to continue on with a PhD if we could work out some sort of arrangement, which we did with Charlie's work in the chemometrics, the digital treatment of data. We were able to come with a project that he could do somewhat remotely, and he actually finished up his PhD while he was teaching at West Point.
Wow. And
he has since retired from the Army and gone to a job with, forgotten the name of the agency, but basically in the Baltimore, Washington area, a Defense Department type of program.
Wow.
So that's the two ends of the PhD.
And you had
stream.
many in between, I remember.
Many in between, yeah. I had probably, I'd have to look up all the names, but a dozen or so PhD students who finished up and a number of master's students. So always liked working with the young people. It was great.
I agree. Did you have any graduate students that were part of another university too at the same time?
Not that I can remember, no.
What's the most important research that you've done?
Well,
I know you did a lot.
Other people have to judge what was important or not, but
Important to you.
right, it was important to me. When I started out, I was doing some work in atomic spectroscopy, and we developed some techniques that became quite useful to people doing ecological work and looking for mercury in various media.
Like methyl mercury.
Methyl mercury. Actually, since we were doing atomic, we just got total mercury, unless you did separations prior to the analysis. But it was a very simple, straightforward procedure that could be done on shipboard and things like that. So that was interesting, and I collaborated with some people in oceanography. There was a young man, young then, who was a quite good graduate student in oceanography by the name of Anders Andren from Sweden. And then later, I thought had done about as much as I was going to do in atomic spectroscopy, and I wanted, you have to do what interests you. And so I became interested in applying Raman spectroscopy to analytical types of problems, and particularly the possibilities of remote sensing in hostile environments, because you could, with a laser, you could probe from a distance, and with developments in electronics in so-called charge-coupled displays, array detectors, it was interesting because you could get sort of immediate look at spectra. They don't have to come out slowly over time, but you could see it all at once. And so we began to work, both Charlie and I, with folks at the Hanford Laboratory out in the state of Washington, which had been where atomic bomb, one of the first atomic bombs was built. And they have these huge tanks of radioactive waste that were supposed to be good for 25 years or something like that, and now we're 70 years on.
The tanks that hold them.
The tanks that hold them, yes. And there were all kinds of issues about how could we determine what molecular species were in there without actually being exposed to it. So we did work on that for a while. I'm not sure that we ever came up with the final, well, there is not yet a final solution to that problem of remotely probing those very difficult environments. But it was, if not the most important, it was certainly some of the most interesting work I did. Interesting to me.
Yes.
Because I had to go out there a number of times, and on one or two occasions got to work in one of their so-called hot labs, see what we could do.
I know you were the associate chair for roughly 9 years. Interspersed.
I did it, I think, 3 times with different chairmen.
I know you were with Ed Mellon and Marty Schwartz.
And Marty Schwartz, and with Naresh Dalal. That was the last 3 or 4 years I was on the faculty here. I worked with Naresh, and each job was a little different. When I first did it, I think with Ed Mellon, the associate chairman did a lot of things, seeing that the graduate students, the teaching assistants all got to assign to the appropriate courses, that they all got paid, that all the courses had people covering them, and even scheduling the times. It's surprised how many faculty don't want to teach at 8 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to schedule all the available hours in the day.
Yes.
So I did a lot of just nitty-gritty stuff, which in later years were taken over by staff. And the associate chairman's job then got to be a little different, interacting with the business manager about budgets and things like that. And it was, I enjoyed my time working with Naresh. He came to me often to ask my opinions about things, which was very kind of him to want to know. But I had been in the department a long time.
And
He was relatively new to the
Yes.
department. And so I think he welcomed my input on different members of the faculty and
Have it.
what kind of things they would like to do and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So it was all very interesting. And I tried to keep busy doing that right up to the end. As of course, I retired a little sooner than I expected because the drop program came in, and it wasn't at all clear that if we didn't take it then, we would ever get a chance to do it. So I was in the first class of drop.
Mhm.
People.
That was a good program.
It was a good program.
I was in it too. I was
Right.
lucky.
Yeah, I was fortunate. When they first set it up, they said, "Okay, you're beyond the, you have more than your 20 years in, and either you get into it now, or we're not promising you'll ever be able to get into it." So I got in it, which meant I retired in 2003, and I probably would have gone on longer if it hadn't been for the drop program. But that meant that I gradually had to phase out of my research program. Wouldn't
Not
be fair to
take
the
new
students,
students, yeah.
not take new students. So I tried to continue to serve the department by putting more effort into the associate chairman job and less into the research side of it. More service and less research. Although I continued teaching full load right up to the end.
So how these duties, how did it influence your thinking of the department, the college, and the university?
Well, let's see. I guess I always had the impression that people were trying to do what they thought was best for the university, even though I might have disagreed with how some of them did it. But it gave me a good sense, even right through the end, of what other faculty members in the department were doing and thinking and working on. Who were the good teachers and who were the semi-good teachers. But I always had the feeling that people were, really putting their best efforts into it. So some of us more gifted than others, but
Yeah, that's true. We all have different strengths
That's right.
individually.
right.
What awards did you receive?
Well, the only one I can think of is I got the Florida Award from the
From the
Florida
American
section of the American Chemical Society.
Mhm.
Yes, I think that was in 2001.
Did you get one of those awards that raised your salary? What were they called?
I must not have gotten one.
They were a good deal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I decided early on that if I was going to worry about salary, I probably should take a job someplace else.
Like in industry.
Right.
But you liked the interaction with
I
the
liked the
students?
interaction.
And you liked Tallahassee?
I did like Tallahassee. My wife and I both grew up in Florida. We had family in Miami and St. Augustine. And I discovered after I got here that I had family here.
Oh.
I knew my father had been born in Whigham, Georgia, which I wasn't sure exactly where that was. But of course, it's only a few miles up the road.
Yes.
But all of his ancestors going back, I think, 4 generations, were born in Gadsden County or lived in Gadsden County. And I discovered after I got here that just up the road there's a cemetery, the Vickers Cemetery,
Oh.
where my great-great-grandfather still there's a marker on his tomb, and it's assumed that his father is also buried. So that's, 4 or 5 generations
Yes.
back in this area of Florida.
Well, that was nice.
Yeah, it's interesting to discover that.
And what do you do now?
Well, as I always answer, whatever I want, which is
Isn't that nice?
it is nice. But I, unlike many of my retired colleagues, when I retired, full stop. I'm retired now. I did come back and teach for 1 year, teach one graduate course for one semester, and I decided that really didn't suit me because it pinned me down too much. And my wife and I were ready to travel, visit children and grandchildren. So we do that. We've been able to go to Europe a couple of times, not in association with a scientific meeting, but just because we wanted to go.
In the places you wanted to go.
In the places we wanted to go. I had various things I wanted to work on. I worked for a while with a group opposing the death penalty. I have done a fair amount of work with the Benton Hills Neighborhood Association. I took up an exercise class. My wife does a lot of cross-stitch, so I said it would be a good thing if I learned to make picture frames and how to mat pictures. So I started doing that. If you've ever priced what it costs to frame a piece of cross-stitch,
yes,
you'll know that was both enjoyable and money-saving.
Plus you could get just the way you wanted it.
That's right. You can pick out just the colors you want.
So do you have a woodworking shop?
No, I have just a rather simple facility. It's just a miter saw and some clamps, and I'm off.
Well, it does the job.
And I have what used to be a bedroom, which I have a lot of the framing, the mat boards and mat cutters and things like that. So I do that. Although we've now pretty much filled up the house. So
I've always wondered with these mats how they get square angles for the middle of the mat.
Oh, well, it turns out it's very easy because
I figured it must.
You have a stop and you slide it in, and then you have a razor knife that you can run.
Oh, I see.
Rotate it 90 degrees and do it again.
I see.
And you can make double and triple mats with a little extra
effort
adjustment. But once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to do.
Okay. Well, it was always a question I had. I didn't know you knew the answer.
You'll have to come by sometime and I'll show you how to make a mat.
Oh, well, thank you.
Okay. It's been a pleasure.
Is there anything else you wanted to say?
I think we pretty well covered it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.